So a couple of days ago, the console version of Delta Force was finally released, but unfortunately it's getting pretty mixed reviews on both PlayStation and Xbox, with the PlayStation review score being at 3.23 and the Xbox score being at roughly 2.75 out of 5. And today I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that, looking at what the glaring issues are for the console version of Delta Force, and also get a discussion going with all of you who have potentially played the game on console. What are your biggest gripes about the game? What do you like? What do you not like? Will you keep playing it? Has it already been uninstalled? I really want to know what the pain points of the console community is. With all that being said, let's get right into it. So one of the biggest topics of contention seems to be crossplay. Now, before starting off on this point, I just want to mention that like 2 days ago, I released a video talking about crossplay and there was no ability to turn it off on console. I was actually misinformed. There's only no available way to turn it off on Xbox within the game itself. I know you can go in the actual settings of the console to turn it off there, but you can't expect players to actually go in those settings and do that. They should just have it directly within the settings of Delta Force, but I digress. I was misinformed for that video, which is why I took it down, and I apologize to anyone that might have been misled by that. So from my understanding, if you turn off crossplay, you only get matched with 1, other players that have also turned off crossplay, and 2, are playing on the same console as you, which can really limit lobby availability, especially considering the crossplay toggle isn't directly available, as I said, in the game on Xbox. You have to go into the console settings to shut it off. And I've been seeing a lot of people say that they would rather have either input-based matchmaking, allowing even PC players that use a controller to play against controller players on console, or have it set so that console-only crossplay is enabled, allowing Xbox and PlayStation players to play together, but not be matched against PC players. And I've also seen a large outcry of people calling for mouse and keyboard support on consoles, and I was just curious as to what your guys' thoughts is on this. Do you think that there should be out-of-the-box mouse and keyboard support for first-person shooters? What is the current support for mouse and keyboard on console games, be it first-person shooters, any type of game whatsoever? I'm really curious because myself don't own a console, and it intrigues me to know whether a lot of games support this or you have to do some finagling to get mouse and keyboard to work. I know way back in the day, like I had a PlayStation 2 and we had set up some kind of mouse and keyboard setup to be able to play Bad Company, the original one that was only released on console, and that was just a nightmare. I would imagine it's a lot easier now to do, but I'm just curious to see and to know how many games actually support this and if this is something that feels very important for the console players out there. Now, I don't necessarily think crossplay is a bad thing, but I can understand it gets really frustrating when you're using a controller getting paired up against people that are playing on mouse and keyboard with potentially higher frame rates, higher refresh rate monitors, and all that stuff, right? That PC has arguably an advantage on, but I don't think the way to go about it is just having it on by default and not being able to turn it off on specific consoles like the Xbox. Ideally, I think it should be input-based matchmaking. Don't know whether they would be able to do that or not. Or in another ideal world, potentially only having crossplay for consoles only, and then the PC lobbies are just their own thing. I don't think the player base is in such dire straits that it warrants having crossplay on, or potentially they could also change the logic behind the crossplay that they currently have so that it prioritizes playing on the same platform that you're currently playing on, and then if there's not enough people to fill out those lobbies, then you engage crossplay to allow them to get into lobbies without needing to wait like 15-20 minutes for a match. So just a few ideas that come to mind when thinking and talking about crossplay, but I can see how it can be a pretty annoying thing being matched against PC players when you're on console. It can feel pretty unfair, especially considering that PC players have had the game for almost a year now. For some reason, apparently the Black Hawk Down campaign can't even be played with friends, so there's no co-op for the campaign, which is really odd, because on PC it launched and you could just party up with anybody or with randoms. You didn't even get any AIs if you were playing by yourself. You had no help whatsoever. You were just a one-man squad, which is the flip side of what we're seeing here on console, where I would imagine you do get AI squad mates when you're playing the Black Hawk Down campaign, but you can't queue up with friends or queue up with random people, which is really weird because the whole campaign was pitched as a co-op first experience, and the fact that that's not available on console just makes you really question why they even released it already in the first place if it wasn't ready to be launched on the consoles. But this definitely seems like an oversight. I don't know if they're completely stretched thin, like they're all hands on deck trying to port the games on all these different platforms platforms that they're on. They're on Android, iOS, Garena, they're on PC, they're on PlayStation, they're Xbox Series X and S. It's just there's so many platforms for them to work on, and the game still has arguably a lot of issues that have not been addressed and or fixed in any way, shape, or form on PC, and I would imagine those issues are still a problem on console as well, and I would definitely like to see them focus on that more so than anything else, because clearly the game right now just isn't vibing with console players. And looking through threads on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, on the Discord and stuff like that, there seems to be a large number of players experiencing general input lag with controllers. Now, we all know that input lag is just the most annoying thing ever, especially when you're playing multiplayer first-person shooters. You have to have that fast reaction time, because if you don't and there's input lag and stuff like that, you have latency issues, you're just going to get dunked on and you're never going to have fun. And I can wholeheartedly sympathize with the players that are experiencing input lag on the controllers. The complaints I've seen seem to come mostly from PlayStation players. They're saying that it just feels like you're playing with like a dollar store controller. That's how bad the input lag is when you're trying to aim and stuff like that. And yeah, it just doesn't seem great. I haven't played on controller whatsoever, even on PC, but I'm curious to know, like on PC, if you're using a controller right now, does it feel okay? Do you think it's an issue that is only like localized on the PlayStation, or do you think there's also issues on Xbox? So if you've played on Xbox, let me know all that. But yeah, definitely not a great experience when you first jump into a game, a multiplayer shooter nonetheless, and you're getting all this input lag, and you're just getting absolutely dumpstered on by people that are on PC because there's crossplay on by default. Yeah, probably not a good first experience, and I can understand why people would have uninstalled or are thinking of uninstalling the game. A fair number of players have also noted not being able to remap or rebind certain controls, specifically for air vehicles, as well as a notable amount of graphics settings being unavailable to toggle on or off, such as motion blur, film grain, chromatic aberration, and all that stuff. Now, I don't know the details on this 100%, but I know that these settings, for the most part, you would want to turn off because they're pretty expensive on the hardware side of things. So you might experience more stuttering, lower frame rates when you have these things on that, for some, make the game look better. I think they make it look worse overall. And I'm always a fan of having higher frame rates and stuff like that. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of complaints that there's just options missing that should be there, and that players should be able to turn off or on. Potentially why they did this is to have just a standardized thing across all consoles, because consoles is a little bit easier arguably to make a product for, because you know, you have a standardized console on PlayStation side or Sony side, and then you have a standardized console with the same hardware for all the consoles, or pretty much, for Microsoft. And I don't know, maybe they remove these options so everyone would have a standardized frame rate of, just throwing out a random number here, 90 frames per second. But yeah, definitely would be nice for all the console players to be able to turn off these annoying settings, in my opinion. I've also seen complaints of people having screen tearing. So screen tearing, if you don't know what that is basically you see a distinct tear in the image that you're being shown on screen. If you look it up on YouTube, there's like 1,000 million examples of screen tearing, and it can be very off-putting and distracting on top of that. And last complaint I've been seeing the most is there's just partying up issues on PlayStation. Again, don't know if this is something that's happening on Xbox. I've only seen people talk about it for PlayStation. They're saying, I'm trying to party up with friends through like the PlayStation network system, whatever that is, through in-game. They're just not showing up. They can't join my squad, whatever it may be. So people can't even party up right now on PlayStation, and I think it's causing a lot of frustration. So just looking through the Twitter thread when they announced that the game was live on PlayStation and Xbox Series X here, so some people seem to be enjoying the game overall, but a lot of them are like, you know, game is bloody awful, shut down your servers before Battlefield 6 does it for you, please add 120 hertz support on consoles. Are there any details on Delta Force Black Hawk Down? Wasn't able to invite friends for it on PlayStation 5. They want console only crossplay. Trailer looks good, but game sucks. Unless you like dying super easy while barely getting any kills, just skip over this one. So yeah, some type of frustration there. Oh, you see this person says, can't even play Black Hawk Down on Xbox with friends, only say fight alone. I thought it was up to 4 players. Yeah, pretty disappointing when you want to hop onto the campaign with friends. This person has a very good point. How am I supposed to finish the season pass in 34 days if the weekly limit is 16 levels a week? Now, I do know that they unlock like the weekly cap when it's getting closer to the end of the season, but still, like, players jumping in mid-season and wanting to buy the battle pass feels pretty bad to have such horrible time or such limited limited time to actually complete that. Again, fix the input lag on controller. It's horrible. Please, only console crossplay. So a lot of complaints here, and you can just go down here. I'll share the link to this thread in the description. But yeah, it definitely seems like they might have rushed this out the door to get people to play on consoles before the launch of Battlefield 6, because arguably Battlefield 6 is probably going to take a lion's share of the player base of Delta Force. Now, some players might just stick on this. It is a free to play game after all. You don't have anything to invest other than your time. You don't really need to spend money if you don't want to. But yeah, I think Battlefield 6 is going to eat part of Delta Force's lunch, so that might be why they pushed out the console version of the game before it was actually ready, and it seems like now they're unfortunately paying the price for that somewhat early console release. Now, the devs are actually hosting an AMA with the lead game designer or game director, Shadow. Unfortunately, last time they hosted an AMA, they weren't really picking the questions that were contentious topics. They were picking the ones that were the easiest to answer. And I think that this one, they're going to have a lot more to answer to, because it's the same questions coming up over and over again. We need either console-only crossplay, we need mouse and keyboard functionalities on PlayStation 5 and Xbox to be able to use crossplay and have it be a fun experience. Input lag, there's not enough visual graphics settings that we can change in the game and all this stuff. So I think they're going to have a pretty difficult AMA coming up, and I hopefully will be covering that when they do release the answers. But I have pretty low hopes on them picking questions that are a little bit more difficult to answer. But yeah, that'll be it for today's video. I just wanted to talk about this because I know everybody was waiting for the console release of the game, especially the people that weren't able or don't have a PC to play it on. They were maybe playing it on mobile, but they were excited to have it on console. And for it to be somewhat of a letdown is very unfortunate. So if you've played Delta Force on console, let me know your experience in the comment section down below. I want to get a discussion going. Hopefully I can bring some of these things to the devs. I do have some form of contact with them. Maybe I can push them in the right direction, or at least voice people's pain points with the console version of the game. And hell, even if you're having pain points on PC, leave it down there as well. Same thing for mobile. At the end of the day, we all just want to have a good game to play and have fun in. But yeah, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.